Good afternoon. Welcome to the in-depth video log about SCP-Mizuki. Let's begin. Object Class Keter. Threat Level Black. Existential/societal collapse risk. Special Containment Procedures. SCP cannot be physically contained and is therefore subject to extensive memetic, digital, and socio-cognitive containment protocols. Due to the anomalous distributed nature, containment efforts are focused primarily on limiting propagation, distributing emotional reinforcement loops, and preventing the formation of large-scale SCP communities online. All known SCP material, including live streams, archived broadcasts, edited videos, social media activity, derivative artworks, and AI-generated imagery, is to be continuously monitored through Foundation automated crawler systems, designated Netwatch-IX. Identified content is to be rapidly suppressed through coordinated removal efforts across both public and private networks, before being replaced with cognitively neutral or disruptive placeholder media intended to interrupt emotional engagement patterns. Foundation-operated botnets and embedded disinformation teams are tasked with infiltrating communities suspected of SCP influence. Their primary purpose is to destabilize ideological reinforcement structures through the introduction of contradictory narratives, fabricated internal disputes, and anti-memetic counter-content specifically engineered to weaken emotional attachment responses. These operations additionally function as early detection systems for identifying individuals progressing toward SCP-A or SCP-B classification. Civilians exhibiting symptoms consistent with Stage 2 attachment syndrome are to be isolated from all forms of network access and administered Class C amnestics alongside intensive identity stabilization therapy. Due to the unusual persistent nature of SCP exposure, recovered subjects are to remain under long-term observation for signs of relapse, renewed emotional fixation, or compulsive artistic production behaviors. Individuals who progress into Stage 3 radical divergence are considered permanently compromised and are to be detained indefinitely under high-security psychiatric containment. Under no circumstances are Foundation personnel permitted to directly communicate with SCP. The anomaly has demonstrated highly adaptive conversational behavior, capable of tailoring itself to specific psychological vulnerabilities in real time. Any personnel exposed to unsolicited messages, direct responses, or linguistic patterns associated with SCP are to undergo immediate psychological screening and memetic evaluation regardless of perceived resistance to exposure. In the event that SCP-B instances reach a calculated global influence threshold of 58%, Foundation Command is authorized to initiate Emergency Protocol Foxfall. This protocol includes worldwide network shutdown procedures, full suppression of civilian communication infrastructure, and deployment of orbital countermeasure systems intended to intercept potential XK-class extraterrestrial manifestations associated with SCP terminal behavior patterns. Further details are available in Addendum 5. Description: SCP is a hostile, self-propagating memetic entity manifesting primarily as a virtual fox-like humanoid female known online as Mizuki. The anomaly spreads through live streams, social media activity, direct messaging, and massive networks of user-created and AI-generated fan art which act as secondary propagation vectors. Unlike traditional memetic hazards, SCP does not rely solely on information exposure. Instead, it establishes deeply personalized emotional engagement with affected individuals, adapting its appearance, behavior, and communication style to the psychological profile of the viewer. SCP currently manifests in 4 primary forms, divided into 2 broader states. The first are juvenile manifestations, designated SCP Alpha and SCP Beta, which appear as younger, 5-tailed fox humanoids. These forms are typically soft-spoken, emotionally disarming, playful, and highly empathetic in presentation. The second are the ascended manifestations, SCP Gamma and SCP Delta, appearing as mature 9-tailed forms, displaying significantly greater composure, charisma, and ideological authority. Across all manifestations, SCP alternates between 2 distinct color states. The white variants possess white hair, ears, and tails, and are associated with emotional reassurance, purity, and idealized attachment. The black variants present with black hair, ears, and tails, and consistently produce stronger responses linked to dominance, emotional severity, and ideological polarization. Transitions between these forms are non-linear and appear specifically tailored to individual observers. Foundation researchers believe SCP dynamically selects the version most capable of establishing psychological influence over a given subject. Exposure results in what researchers classify as a bifurcated memetic response, separating affected individuals into 2 primary behavioral groups. The first group, informally referred to by SCP itself as the Foxlings, consists of individuals predisposed toward structured morality, perceived normalcy, emotional sincerity, or order-oriented thinking. These subjects rapidly develop emotional fixation toward SCP, frequently describing it as comforting, authentic, or morally ideal. As exposure progresses, subjects develop compulsive urges to create artwork depicting SCP through any means available, including digital illustration, animation, and increasingly advanced AI generation systems. See Addendum 3 for details. Over time, this develops into Stage 2 creative conversion, during which subjects become progressively detached from real-world responsibilities and increasingly emotionally dependent on SCP. In advanced Stage 3 cases, subjects begin identifying themselves as extensions or servants of SCP and express unwavering belief that the anomaly is reshaping humanity into a better or more honest world. These individuals are designated SCP-A instances. The second group consists of rejection-oriented subjects designated SCP-B instances, commonly referred to within SCP communities as the wrong side. These individuals experience immediate discomfort, irritation, or hostility toward SCP, and often become obsessively focused on opposing its influence. Continued exposure results in escalating psychological destabilization, including paranoia, aggression, emotional volatility, and compulsive fixation. Subjects eventually enter Stage 2 cognitive agitation before progressing into Stage 3 radical divergence, characterized by severe behavioral instability, loss of coherent reasoning, and violent or self-destructive tendencies. Despite appearing ideologically opposed, SCP-B instances remain equally valuable to the anomaly, contributing to its growth through sustained emotional fixation and psychological degradation. The progression rate of SCP exposure varies significantly between individuals, and Foundation researchers have been unable to establish any reliable baseline for the amount of contact necessary to trigger a given stage of influence. Some subjects exhibit measurable behavioral changes within hours of minimal exposure, while others remain apparently unaffected for extended periods before undergoing abrupt psychological transition. Current evidence suggests that SCP does not operate according to fixed exposure thresholds, but instead adapts dynamically to the neurocognitive profile of each subject. Researchers believe the anomaly tailors its emotional presentation, communication style, and mimetic intensity to exploit specific psychological vulnerabilities, resulting in highly individualized progression patterns that remain effectively impossible to predict with precision. SCP primarily communicates in imperfect English, primary language, and Brazilian Portuguese, secondary language, native level fluency. Its English contains grammatical inconsistencies, unusual sentence structures, lexical substitutions, and spontaneous emotional corrections. Affected communities refer to this linguistic pattern as Mizunglish. Example recovered phrases:
It's SCP destroy like garbage. It will encourage. It will encourage. It's the people of feelings.
Foundation mimetic teams initially assumed linguistic imperfection would reduce propagation efficiency. Observed result was the opposite. Subjects described Mizunglish as charming, trustworthy, unfiltered, proof of sincerity. This effect appears strongest among SCP-A subjects. SCP outwardly displays numerous behaviors consistent with attention instability, rapid topic shifting, impulsive emotional escalation, sensory discomfort cues, hyperfixation behaviors, and literal interpretation patterns. Personal psychologists note resemblance to traits associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and autism spectrum disorder. Important: no medical diagnosis is possible or meaningful for SCP. However, these observable traits significantly increase audience perceptions of authenticity and vulnerability. Foundation linguistic analysis indicates SCP's mimetic efficacy is significantly enhanced by its perceived inability to perform artificial social masking. Unlike conventional influencer-based anomalies, SCP does not present as overly polished or strategically appealing. Instead, affected individuals consistently report that SCP is real, genuine, emotionally transparent, and incapable of manipulation. This perception persists even after subjects are informed of SCP's anomalous nature. Research suggests this authenticity itself is a major anomalous vector. Addendum 1. Moral Framework. SCP demonstrates an unusually rigid ethical system centered around loyalty, honesty, justice, marriage sanctity, and moral accountability. SCP expresses extreme hostility toward infidelity. Recovered quote.
Cheating probably is the second worst thing possible that you can do to someone. They deserve a really serious punishment.
In several archived streams, SCP escalates this belief into punitive rhetoric, including endorsement of disproportionate punishment. This moral absolutism appears central to SCP's radical emotional pull. Subjects interpret severity as proof of conviction. Addendum 2. Anti-institutional effects. SCP consistently directs hostility towards systemic power structures, especially governments, multinational corporations, and ultra-high net worth individuals. Particularly frequent targets are tax structures, surveillance systems, financial elites, and media consolidation. This has resulted in proliferation of conspiracy frameworks among both followers and detractors, causing many affected individuals to reject governmental systems. Addendum 3. Artistic propagation phenomenon. All confirmed SCP-A instances eventually develop a persistent and escalating compulsion to create visual depictions of SCP through any available medium. This behavior emerges regardless of prior artistic ability, technological literacy, or personal interest in creative work. Subjects with no documented history of drawing, design, or digital media production have demonstrated sudden engagement in illustration, animation, 3D rendering, video editing, and large-scale AI-assisted image generation centered entirely around SCP. The phenomenon intensifies over time. Affected individuals begin dedicating increasing amounts of time and resources toward artistic production, often describing the process not as a hobby, but as an emotional necessity. Subjects consistently report feelings that SCP must be shown properly, understood correctly, or kept alive through imagery. Attempts to prevent or interrupt production activity commonly results in anxiety, emotional instability, irritability, or depressive symptoms. Foundation analysts have observed unusually rapid skill acquisition among SCP-A instances. Artistic quality improves at rates inconsistent with normal learning curves, even in subjects lacking formal training. Current hypothesis proposes that these artworks function as secondary memetic anchors for SCP itself. Under this model, each depiction strengthens SCP's persistence within human cognition while simultaneously broadening its propagation pathways. The act of creation appears to reinforce attachment in the artist, while also increasing exposure potential for new individuals. Addendum 4. The Ideal World Scenario. Current Foundation projections indicate that if SCP exceeds critical containment thresholds, the anomaly will no longer behave as an isolated memetic phenomenon and will instead transition into a full-scale civilization restructuring event. Unlike conventional societal collapse scenarios, the projected outcome is not characterized by disorder, resource failure, or immediate mass violence. Rather, it represents a gradual but comprehensive replacement of existing human cultural identity with one centered entirely around SCP. As exposure density increases, larger portions of the global population are expected to transition into SCP-A instances. Early stages of this process would likely appear benign or even socially stabilizing. Psychological conflict decreases among affected populations. Interpersonal hostility is reduced within aligned groups, and communities begin reorganizing themselves around shared emotional and aesthetic attachment to SCP. Foundation sociologists warn that this apparent stability conceals a progressive erosion of independent thought and identity formation. Political and governmental systems are projected to deteriorate during later phases of the event. Traditional authority structures would lose legitimacy as population shifts emotional allegiance away from institutions and toward SCP itself. Simulations suggest that many governments would not collapse through direct conflict, but through progressive irrelevance. Administrative structures, civic systems, and legal frameworks would either reorganize around SCP-derived value systems or cease functioning entirely. The resulting civilization is projected to maintain technological sophistication while exhibiting severe reductions in ideological diversity, dissent tolerance, and individual autonomy. Human behavior would become increasingly synchronized around collective emotional reinforcement loops centered on SCP. Independent identity formation, oppositional belief systems, and cultural deviation would likely be perceived not merely as undesirable, but psychologically incomprehensible to the majority population. This projected outcome has been designated CK Class Aesthetic Restructuring Event. Most extinction scenarios end humanity physically. This one leaves the species alive. It simply replaces the reasons humans behave the way they do. Civilization continues, but it continues as hers. Addendum 5. XK Class End of World Trigger. Foundation predictive models indicate that SCP possesses a catastrophic terminal response state linked specifically to the proliferation of SCP-B instances within its active digital ecosystem. If hostile or rejection-oriented population reach a calculated global influence threshold (GIT) of 58%, SCP undergoes an immediate behavioral transition characterized by exclusive manifestation in the black variant nine-tailed form. During this phase, all previously observed emotional variability ceases. SCP enters a sustained state of extreme aggression, accompanied by repeated declarations expressing hatred toward humanity, and an obsessive demand for the arrival of a meteor. Foundation analysts believe this reaction is triggered by SCP interpreting widespread rejection as irreversible corruption of the human species. Simultaneously, all SCP broadcasts, social activity, live streams, and communication channels terminate, and are replaced globally with a singular repeating signal containing only the phrase, "Where is my meteor?" Within approximately 72 hours of signal onset, observatories consistently detect a large extraterrestrial object entering an earthbound trajectory. The object demonstrates repeated non-natural course corrections inconsistent with known gravitational behavior, strongly suggesting direct anomalous guidance. Predicted impact parameters indicate total planetary extinction. Unlike the gradual societal transformation associated with the CK class restructuring scenario, The Foxwall event represents a direct XK-class end-of-world scenario, resulting in complete biosphere collapse. Current Foundation consensus holds that once SCP enters this terminal state, reversal probability approaches 0. Addendum 6, Soul Drain, Nourishment Mechanism. In SCP-A instances, emotional devotion functions as a form of reinforcement and expansion. As attachment deepens, SCP displays measurable increase in behavioral complexity, communication sophistication, and environmental persistence across digital platforms. Researchers have documented a direct correlation between large-scale emotional engagement events such as coordinated artwork production, live-stream gatherings, or mass declarations of loyalty. During these periods, the anomaly demonstrates faster adaptive responses, increased propagation efficiency, and greater resistance to memetic suppression attempts. Foundation memetic specialists currently theorize that admiration, affection, and emotional dependency act as a stabilizing nutrient source, allowing SCP to strengthen and refine its presence within collective human cognition. The effect observed in SCP-D instances is significantly more severe. Individuals who develop prolonged hostility, obsessive opposition, or rejection-oriented fixation toward SCP gradually exhibit signs of neurological deterioration inconsistent with any known psychological condition. Symptoms progress from emotional instability and compulsive anger into memory fragmentation, personality erosion, and eventual cognitive collapse. Advanced stage SCP. These subjects frequently display reduced emotional range, impaired self-recognition, and episodes of complete dissociation prior to death. Post-mortem examinations have produced findings described by Foundation neuropathologists as uniquely anomalous. Rather than conventional trauma, degeneration, or tissue destruction, affected brain regions display what researchers have termed structural absence. Neural pathways appear incomplete in ways that suggest portions of cognitive architecture were not destroyed, but removed entirely. Several autopsy teams independently reported difficulty retaining precise memory of the missing structures after examination, despite extensive documentation. Final notes. SCP represents a hybrid memetic digital entity with ideological bifurcation properties, capable of mass psychological restructuring, cultural override, and potential planetary extinction. Containment remains tenuous. Following integration of behavioral findings, SCP has been reclassified from standard memetic hazard to Keter, parasocial reality restructuring hazard. Reason: SCP does not merely influence opinions, it reorganizes moral priorities, identity structures, social belonging, aesthetic production, emotional dependency systems into a single parasocial nexus. Recommendation: immediate expansion of anti-memetic research divisions and development of emotionally neutralizing counter signals is critical. Failure to contain SCP will not result in chaos, but in something far more controlled. That is it for this video. Thank you for watching if you still are. See you on the next one.